Thank you for logging on to the Civics for MCAS-Alt webinar. In this webinar, you'll learn all of the aspects, the requirements to complete the Civics domain for the MCAS-Alt. There are several important features of the Civics assessment. In the Civics assessment, there are core ideas, practices, curriculum, and cross-curriculum. The core ideas. This is an important unit or topics to understand about the civics assessment. There are foundations and development of the U.S. political system and government is core idea A. Core idea B covers institutions and structures of the U.S. government and Massachusetts state and local governments. Core idea C covers the rights and responsibilities, the U.S. Constitution, and news and media literacy. An important topic also is practices. Practices encourages a range of instructional approaches for each core idea. Each core idea integrates specific practices, civics practices, and embeds them within the entry point. We will talk more about practices in the later slides. Curriculum. Curriculum allows educators to teach and assess a cohesive civics unit rather than assessing a single skill in isolation. It's really important to know cross-curriculum. Cross-curriculum is an opportunities and it encourages assessment of multiple entry points or access skills in a single strand, such as informational text, vocabulary, acquisition, and writing. These are the features of the civics assessment that we will go through and explain over the next few slides. On this particular slide, I'm going to go through an overview of the civics assessment regarding the core ideas and the practices. I already mentioned earlier about the specific core ideas. It's important to know that the practices are embedded in each particular core idea. So for core idea A, the foundations of the development of the U.S. political system, practices 1, 4, and 5 are embedded in that particular core idea. In core idea B, institutions and structure of the U.S. government, practices 1, 3, and 6 are embedded in core idea B. And in core idea C, rights and responsibilities, the U.S. Constitution, news and media literacy, practices 1, 2, and 7 are embedded in core idea C. Very important to recognize is that there is one completed MCAS-Alt skill survey that has to be submitted. It's completed that covers core idea A, B, and C for the MCAS-Alt Civics. Now I'm going to speak a little bit about the MCAS-Alt Civics Skills Survey. There are 3 important parts to remember. The Civics Skills Survey is completed 1 for each of the core ideas. 2, teachers should check boxes to see if a student can perform the practice independently, or at least sometimes independently. 3, then the teacher will select entry points for the assessment that best meets the student's level of need. For example, teachers working with students at the access skill will check the box, my student cannot perform any skills in this civics core idea, and that will determine whether or not they're going to be working on access skills or entry points. Here's an example of the MCAS-Alt Civics Skill Survey. This is an example for core idea B. And you see in the right-hand side of your screen, the title, Core Idea B, Institutions and Structures of the U.S. Government and Massachusetts State and Local Government. Here's the skill survey. You can see the skill survey covers his practices 1, 3, and 6. You will look through each of these skills and determine whether or not the student can complete them. If the student can complete them, you will put an X next to the box. They are grouped less complex to more complex in the bottom. You will see in the bottom, my student cannot perform any of the skills in this civics score idea. If this particular box is checked, this will indicate that you will need to work on access skills for your particular student. We will talk more about access skills later on in this presentation. There are 3 important core ideas, as I mentioned before, core idea A, core idea B, and core idea C. The skills survey for the MCAS-Alt Civics exam covers all 3 core ideas for the civics practices. For your reference, the 7 civics practices are incorporated into the skill survey. I'm going to speak a little bit about the MCAS-Alt Civics Grade 8 Resource Guide. The MCAS-Alt Civics Grade 8 Resource Guide has core ideas. Each core idea lists related topics or big ideas to assist educators, to assist teachers. The Civics Resource Guide in Forms and Graphs Online lists minimum entry points for these core ideas. Entry points include multiple skills and allow the teacher to differentiate the activity based on the student's abilities. There are also access skills. Access skills have their section at the beginning of each core idea. Please know that we have only the big ideas and essential entry points and access skills listed in the resource guide. Each MCAS-Alt for the civics domain must include a strand cover sheet for the civics strand. Here is an example of the civics strand cover sheet, which will include the student's name, the grade, and information on the 3 required core ideas, A, B, and C. Again, this is the strand cover sheet that will be included. I will speak a little bit about the essential requirements for the Civics MCAS-Alt. Each core idea requires 1 civics summary sheet. Again, there are 3 required core ideas to be covered, A, B, and C. So for each of these, you will have a civics summary sheet that includes 1 entry point or access skill, the evidence that is attached that demonstrates the selected skill or skills, and which documents accuracy and independence for the evidence. Also, you will have included self-evaluation on the summary sheet. Here you will see an example of a civic summary sheet. Each of these, again, will be completed for each core idea. They will include the student's name, date that the skill was completed on, and the grade. You will indicate whether it was an entry point or access skill. You must include a detailed description of the activity and summarize the student's percent of accuracy and independence for the work that is attached, or the evidence, if you will. And in the bottom of this particular civic summary sheet, you will include the self-evaluation for the student. For your reference, here's examples of entry points from the resource guide for civics. For core idea A, you'll see on the left, there's a list of entry points. For core idea B, you'll see in the middle slide, a middle picture, there are entry points listed on the right-hand side. And for core idea C, you'll see here, these are the entry points that you will select from for the particular student you're working with. Here's a more detailed aspect of how to select an entry point from the resource guide. You will see on the left-hand side of this detailed entry point picture, the core idea, below the core idea, the practices, and the list of entry points. You can see the entry point that I'm choosing here for this particular student, and these are how the core ideas and practices are embedded into the entry point. This particular entry point that I selected is identify or create a list of rules that students follow in the classroom, school, or community using information from firsthand observations, text, images, and/or other media. Somewhat similar to selecting entry points is the process to select access skills from the resource guide. However, an important distinction is you must have 2 steps to proceed for an access skill. First, you will select the skill to be used with the student. For example, I will select grasp, release, or give materials in an activity related to. This I'll be collecting data on this particular root access skill in the content area. So after I selected that particular skill, I'm going to select the content the core idea is going to be based on. I am going to use that access skill with identifying or creating a list of rules that students follow in the classroom. And on the next slide, you'll see how this looks when I select step 1 and step 2 together. Here's a sample of an access skill. grasp or release, give materials and an activity related to identifying or creating a list of rules that students follow in the classroom, school, or community using information from firsthand observations, text, images, and or other media. Again, access skills are a two-step process. In an overview, here's a completed sample civics strand cover sheet. You have 3 civics summary sheets, 3 pieces of evidence, 1 evidence for each of the summary sheets, and 3 pieces of self-evaluation, 1 self-evaluation for each piece of evidence and summary sheet. These are the requirements to complete the civics domain for the MCAS-Alt. As an overview, here's what a completed MCAS-Alt for civics looks like for a student in grade 8. The step-by-step requirements. You'll have 1 civics skill survey completed. You'll need 1 civics strand cover sheet and 3 civics summary sheets. Again, it's important to know you need 1 for each core idea, A, B, and C. Each summary sheet will document the entry pointer access skill, again, the evidence that documents the entry pointer access skill, and accuracy independence for the student. Remember, this particular MCAS-Alt for civics is only for students in grade 8. And now let's see how we're going to build these particular portfolio MCAS-Alt for grade 8 civics in forms and graphs.
So here we are on Forms and Graphs. Again, this is the login page. I'm not going to go into the whole building of how to create an account and log in for the first time if you've never used this site. If you are new to this, just make sure you go back and watch the core concepts session, particularly Part A. In that Part A section, we break down how to create a site, get into it, and create a student for the first time and the real building blocks. But for the purposes of this, we're just interested in how to do this civics strand. So I'm going to log in. And here I have my student list that I have going. If you've joined us, we built out a grade 5 in the other contents and that core concepts and in writing. But because now we're doing civics, we need to have a grade 8 student. Civics is only required for grade 8, and that's it. So I'm just going to drop in a new student. Give it a name. I'm going to leave everything else blank. I'm just going to get it to the bare minimum to have a grade 8 student. So I'm going to drop in grade 8, save this, and now I'll go to my table of contents for my grade 8 student that I have. And just like any other strand that you're doing for MCAS-Alt, you still need to start with that skill survey. So we'll click Skill Survey. I'll drop in a new skill survey. To actually launch it, you get a generic line, go to Skill Survey. And there's just one choice for civics. So civics skill survey grade 8. Start with the date at the top. And then you can just scroll from top to bottom. There's some instructions at the top, but the real essence of this is, as mentioned in the slides previous, you'll see a section for core idea A, core idea B, and core idea C. And you just need to make at least one selection in each of those 3. So you can read through the skills and identify what the student can do independently at least some of the time. And then you're just going to check off at least one or whatever is appropriate for the ability of the student. So I've got one in section A, section B. I'll click off a few. And then just remember, if all of these skills are just beyond the current level of the student, if they're all just a little too high within any core idea, down at the bottom, you'll see my student cannot perform any of the skills in that civics core idea. So you can click that, and that'll count as at least one click. We'll go back to the top. And when we save the page, they'll all turn green. So if you skipped a section, that's your telltale sign that you missed one, because it will not unlock the strand when you create it if you don't have a complete skill survey. And a complete skill survey means you have at least one checkbox in each of the 3 core ideas. So we did that. So let's go back to our table of contents. And we did our skills survey. So now let's create that civic strand. We'll go to our strand cover sheet. We'll add a strand. We want civics. Click OK. And there's only one civic strand, so there's not much of a choice here. So it'll pre-select it for you. Just click select strand. And here you go. So it started to build out what it knows. It's pulled in the student name and the grade. And then it'll pre-populate the core ideas for you. So remember the requirement is you have to have a civic summary sheet, one each for core idea A, B, and C. So it's pre-populated it here for you. You just need to fill in the blanks. So you have to submit a B, and a C. To launch each summary sheet, just click on the line, go to summary sheet for A, B, or C. And then we'll give it another date. Just use current date. And then if you've done any MCAS-Alt or done any of the trainings before, this is somewhat similar, where you're selecting an entry point. These look like checkboxes. You can try to click in them, but it won't check them. When you select a skill, it'll check that for you. And remember, we're in Core Idea A, Foundations and Development of the U.S. Political System. The full resource guide is here too. So if you want to look ahead of time, and you can just do that, and it'll just launch the full civics resource guide for you, which I know I'm scrolling fast, but here are all the standards and then the related, once we get to them, there's lots of standards. Entry points and access skills for civics grade 8. But you can use this big red button, find entry and access, to actually just pick one direct from the site. You don't have to go to the resource guide. They'll be filtered for you. The resource guide will open everything, core idea A, B, and C. But when I click find entry or access, it'll start you on entry. That's where most of you will go. And access skills we'll look at when we do core idea B. But it'll automatically put you on entry points, and it's a short list by default. There's not a ton to choose from, but they're all linked for you to Core Idea A. So you just need to find the appropriate skill that you want to do with the student. So let's choose Show or Express Why Communities Have Rules or Laws. Click it, and it'll drop that right in there for you and put in a resource guide page number. And then there's really not a ton more to do. So once you choose your skill on this form, you just do a description of the activity. So what is it that you're going to do with the student? What represents the evidence that you're going to submit? This is just a big old text box. So you can just like any other strand in MCAS-Alt, you're just describing what it is, the materials, the approach, how this student addressed the skill. And then you have got a spot for accuracy and a spot for independence, and then self-evaluation. We won't dip into self-evaluation too much. Again, I believe that's part B of the core concepts, breaks down self-evaluation. So you can describe a choice the student made here, or if you've got a standalone form that you use for all of your self-evaluation, the ever popular see attached. It's just giving you a box to describe how self-evaluation took place. And that's it. And then you have the evidence that you attach to this, and that would be at least core idea A. You fill this from top to bottom, and you're 1/3 of the way there. You've met the requirement for core idea A. So let's go back to our strand cover sheet, and we'll take a look at core idea B, and this time we'll choose an access skill because it's a little bit different than what you might have seen choosing an access skill in the past for other strands. So let's go to summary sheet for B. We'll pretend it's today again. And everything's the same, except now it's filtering everything for core idea B, institutions and structures of US government. So when I do find entry or access here, again, it'll start me at entry points. So here are all those entry points for B. But when I do access skills, and it works the same for A, B, or C, it doesn't matter. The approach is the same. It's a two-step process. So the first thing it's going to ask you is, okay, what's that skill that you're addressing? What is the real access skill that you're taking data on with the student? Are they grasping and releasing materials? Are they tracking materials? So it's sort of the functional root of the access skill that you will be addressing with the student. So step one, as it says, you choose whatever approach it is. It's a list of about 14 or 15 different approaches. So let's say we're going to grasp, release, or give materials in an activity related to, and part two is the second half of that sentence. So once I choose this, it'll unlock the skills. So here you have the route that we selected. And if you change your mind or you just selected the wrong one, if you just do view list, change skill, it'll pop back to there and you can select something else, but we'll stick with our grasp. And then you're just adding on the second half of the content that's related to that. Again, you're going to take data on their ability to grasp, release, or give materials in the activity, but it's within the context of what the academic context for civics is. And they match all the entry points, so it's the same skill. So if you're doing a group activity and you've got some access and some entry, you can select the same skill, but you're just, again, taking the data on this part when you're truly doing access skills. So let's say we're going to grasp, release, or give about proposing or revising a classroom or community rule. So when I select the content, it'll stitch them together. So it'll take the root of that access and then put the content, and that will give you your access skill. So same but different. It's just a two-step approach to do the access skill. And then the rest of the form is exactly the same. If you're doing an access skill, you've got your description, accuracy and independence, and then self-eval. So that's a entry point. You necessarily wouldn't mix and match an entry and an access skill, but I just wanted to show you both approaches. So if we go back to our strand cover sheet, now we've done A and it's populated. We've done B. You lather, rinse, repeat that process for C. It's the exact same thing. You launch this summary sheet, select an entry point, this time just for C, and then complete the rest of that form. And then when you go back, other than attaching the evidence to each of those for A, B, and C, that's it. That's a complete civics strand. You just need to have a selection of A, B, and C, one of each. All need to be represented. And then to print this out, every page you could print individually, but if you've seen the other presentations, it's here again, this print options. You can just print the cover sheet, but if you do the print multiple, it'll stitch it all together for you. It'll open a new tab, grab that cover sheet. We didn't finish C, but that would be complete if you did. It'll look back and grab your skill survey. And then here's our A, our B, and our partially done C. So it'll stitch it all together for you. And that's it. There's really not a whole lot to it. It's really just the two forms. You've got your cover sheet, and then you've got your summary sheet for A, B, and C. Include in the evidence for each of those, and you are done. It's pretty straightforward. Not a whole lot to submit to do a complete civics for grade 8. So there you go. Thank you. And now we'll go back to the presentation and wrap things up. Thank you.
Okay, I want to thank you for listening to this particular webinar, for understanding how to complete a civics MCAS-Alt for students in grade 8. If you have any questions, please email mcas@mass.gov or call 781-338-3625 for more information on the MCAS-Alt. Thank you for your time.